So I promised you that I would show you where certain key pieces of information show up in the fixed fields for these records if you're reading the MARC record. So here what you have on this slide is I have the fixed fields in a grid format, which you guys can see. Ask somebody who knows a little more about using Evergreen how to make that come up. Or if you prefer, and it's faster, you can look at the leader and 008, and I'm showing you in both of these where you can find this information. So these are the same thing, the grid and the leader 008 combination. Same exact information. So two key things. If you have this record for books and you want to, number one, generate that book icon up at the top, in order to do that, you need to have the type set as A. So it's pretty much gonna be that way, but if it's not showing up as a book and you have a book, you need to send that on to be checked. Some other things that are useful. Number one, the audience coding, so the target audience. Your cataloging committee decided that this must always be coded so that you can actually search and sort things a little more easily in NC Cardinal by age group reading the resource. The primary ones that you should see are J for juvenile, D for young adult, or E for adult. There are others. We don't need to go into the others because they get hairy. I mean, ABC, it's all sorting things by age. What a pain. Just put a J. I looked at that a few times. I thought that was irritating and put a J. So if you're a bibliographic cataloger, you've now got the green light from me. Just put a J. These are the main ones. So if you don't see something in that audience field, and you can see in the fixed fields in the grid, it's up there. In the 008, it's like sort of in the middle. If you don't see that coded, that's something that you want to check on or send to a bibliographic cataloger. Or you may decide that you're going to sort of, these would not necessarily be high priority, but you might want to put these in the low priority bucket for things to be added later on. One thing that is important, your patrons, they want to know the difference between fiction and nonfiction. And in fact, so do you, so you know where to shelve this thing. So that's important information to look for in that lit F field in the grid. 0 for nonfiction, 1 for fiction. And you can see in the 008 that goes very near the end, right around where you see the ENG for English in this case. A lot of this you can sort of find just from the displays in the catalog, so you can see that it says it's juvenile or that it's fiction, and that's fine. But if you're curious, you can go in here and check these out just to make sure that it is all correct and going to be as usable as possible for your patrons. Something to be very sure about, and I've sort of mentioned this, but it bears mentioning again and again and again. Make sure that you choose a record that is appropriate to the format of material that you have in hand. So if you have an audiobook, choose an audiobook record. Do not choose a print book record or an ebook record. I don't care if the title and the statement of responsibility are the same. They are not the same thing. Do not put them on the same record. Do not put a DVD and a Blu-ray on the same record, unless, of course, they're in the same case, in which case you create a record or use a record that's for both of them at the same time. But you do not combine these things on records. You use the record for what you have. So if you have a book, you use a book record, not an ebook record. If you have a DVD, you do not use a Blu-ray record. you're going to steer your patrons wrong. You're also going to make your life harder and everybody else's lives harder because things are not now where they need to be. Sometimes this is going to mean that you're going to find a perfectly good record that is not for the format that you have. And you're going to have to send it on to the bibliographic cataloger. Well, you know what? They'll find that perfectly good record and copy it and use it to create a new record, and all is not lost. But you can't attach something that is not a certain format to that format's record. Bad things happen. Very, very bad things. It's like, I mean, it's not neurosurgery, but it's pretty close in the level of bad. So, for instance, if you have audiobooks and you want the very blurry icon with the book and the CD on it to show up, notice this codes differently from what we had for books. So the type is I for a non-musical sound recording. If you're looking for that in the leader, it shows up right after the C. You're usually going to have a C there. Might be an N. Basically, look for the numbers, and then your second letter is going to need to be I. And that will make it display as an audiobook. If you have musical sound recording, like you've got a pop section, you still keep your CDs, they haven't all been stolen yet, then you're going to code it J. So it's different depending on whether it's non-music or music, which is nice because that helps you tell the difference. You don't just have all your sound recordings thrown in a bin somewhere. You've got the audiobooks in one place and the music in another place. For ebooks, which is this fun little icon that again is blurry, but it's the book with the green arrow. It looks the same as the fixed fields for a regular old book. The difference is that that form field is coded O. And you can see that down in the 008. It goes right after your audience coding. So J for juvenile, O saying that this is an online item, like an ebook. So those are just some key areas to look at to make sure that the icons are showing up. However, with a lot of the time with you guys, if you're just doing the item cataloging, the main thing you can do is look at that icon in the catalog, and if it's not right, then you know something's wrong in here, and you just send it on. So don't get too worried if you're like, oh God, I never want to see these weird strings of numbers and letters again. You may not have to, but it's nice to know the basics of what's going on there. DVDs, basically what the icon looks like, it's a disc with a little board thing where you say and cut or whatever. I don't know what that thing's called. There are some things that tell you that this is a DVD. So number 1 in your fixed fields, the type is G. So you can see that in the grid. Also in the leader, you can see that that second letter is a G. So you're always going to look for that second letter. The material type, that T mat, is V, meaning that this is a video recording. And that goes way over at the end of the fixed fields, the 008. And then it's also, you'd have to look at the 007. This is where you're going to see the difference between a DVD and a Blu-ray. This is like the place that gets coded. So your fourth letter in, and there should be a space in there, I believe, but your fourth letter in is going to be a V for DVD, basically. So that's, if the DVD icon is not showing up and you have a DVD, something's wrong in there. And you can see with a Blu-ray, everything's the same, except that that fourth letter is now an S for Blu-ray. I don't know why S, I guess, is something with stereo. And you see your icon, really the only difference is that the disc is blue, because, you know, it's a Blu-ray. So that's how you're going to tell the difference. So look at those icons. Make sure that it's showing up with what you actually have. In some cases, you will have those combinations where you have a DVD and a Blu-ray in the same container. And if you leave those in the same container, you want to make sure that both of the icons show up. Or if you run screaming from something like that, where you're putting together DVD and Blu-ray and oh my God, now you have to code extra stuff. Make sure that each one has its own record and each record has the correct icon and you don't get them turned around backwards. So we've talked about this, but it bears repeating. If you find more than one record that matches the item you have in hand, double check first of all that it's the same thing. Then, if you still have multiple records, add your holdings to the most complete mark record, or if they're both equally wonderful, select the record that has the most copies held by libraries in the system. And then if you have multiple records, put them in a bucket, send them to a bibliographic cataloger so they can merge them and nobody has to worry about this problem again.